Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Laurel Rodriguez, and I am the Director of Marketing and Customer Success for SureImpact. Our speaker today is Sheri Chaney Jones, founder and president of SureImpact. And our topic today is how to make 2022 your most impactful year yet. So our speaker, Sheri, for more than 20 years, she has applied performance management, evaluation, and organizational behavior best practices to nonprofit organizations and government agencies. An author, professor, and internationally recognized expert, Sheri believes in data, metrics, and accountability. Sheri is passionate about women's equity and the advancement of girls. She is the Columbus chapter president of the National Association of Women Business Owners and a commissioner for the Columbus Women's Commission for the Mayor's Office. Just a quick note, we will answer any questions you enter in the Zoom chat panel. Feel free to submit as many as you would like. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Sheri.
Thank you so much, Laurel, and good day to everybody. I'm so excited to be here. This is our first SureImpact webinar of 2022, and I've missed you all. I've missed presenting and speaking to you all, and I'm excited to share with you how to make 2022 your most impactful year yet, and what you should be thinking about as we, start this new year, new energy, new growth, and really move your missions forward. So Laurel has already introduced myself. No need to do that. Oh, goodness. All right. So as we come into this webinar, and I'm assuming we've all signed up because we want to take away one piece of information, one, I like to say elegant idea that will take your organization to the next level. I would love to know who is in the call, get us participating a bit. So open up your chat feature. I think we don't have a real poll, right, Laurel? It's a chat. Yes. Okay. So where are you on your journey to better outcome and impact management and reporting for 2022? So open up your chat. Let me know whether you're just learning, you've started to create a plan, you've got a really strong plan, or you're like, I don't even know what impact management is. So I've joined this webinar to find out. So where are you in terms of getting on your impact journey? So you will have a really great impact report at the end of this year. Let me know who's in the room, where you're coming from. It helps me target, where I should start this particular webinar. So we've got Melissa, you've started to create a plan, great. Kaylin's starting to make a plan. Patty's got a plan. We've got a lot of, we're in the creating plans. You're here to learn about it, just starting, just learning. Okay, good. Well, I will make sure to hit on all those topics, and especially for those of you who are already still in the planning phase of the process. Maybe I'll give you just a little bit more insights into what you should be thinking about to develop that plan. Very excited. So first off, we need to talk about why impact measurement, why outcome measurement? Why is it so important that to have a very impactful year, we actually are thinking about measurement? Oftentimes you get to the end of the year and your board or your executive directors, your funders are asking for an impact measurement report. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, we should have done that 12 months ago in order to have the outcome data. And so we must think about what data we need, the outcomes we need now in order to have an impactful year. And why? Because if we don't measure, if we don't have outcome and impact measures, how will we know if we made a difference at the end of the year? How will we know if we've moved the needle? How will we know if anything has changed? And another reason that we need impact measurement data and outcome measurement data and be thoughtful about collecting it throughout the year in order to have a very successful year is we have finite time. We all have, our staff has unlimited time, especially now that we're seeing the nonprofit sector is experiencing the workforce shortage as much as any other sector. And so you may have limited staff resources. You also likely have a fixed budget or not an as expansive budget as you want. So you may have limited resources. And so when we have our impact measurement, our outcome measurement, it lets us know what should we be focusing on? What really drives the needle? Where should we be spending our time in order to have the greatest impact, in order to move our mission forward? And so the beginning of having an impactful year is starting with making sure you have the right data in place so that at the end of the year, you can tell your story and use numbers as part of that story. All right, so in order to have that, the best way, the most successful way, the easiest way to end up with the impact data that you have is to become an impact-centric organization. Because when organizations have adopted a culture of impact centricity, then they have everything they need to use data to make decisions, to have a great impactful year, to have a great impact report at the end of the year. And so when you develop these components in your organization, you will be much more successful. So the first thing that an impact-centric organization does is it uses that data, it uses that outcomes, impact data to make decisions. So they're using it in their strategic planning processes, their budgeting processes, their contracting processes, kind of their program improvement processes, quality assurance processes. And so data becomes part of the conversation. It becomes part of how organizations make decisions. So that's one key driver of an impact-centric organization. And the data that they have is not just outputs data. It's data aligned with their mission. It's aligned with the outcomes they're achieving for their customers, their clients, and beneficiaries. Another thing we find that impact-centric organizations have are they use those data pieces, especially around outcomes, to have accountability conversations with their staff. So impact-centric organizations move from compliance only to outcomes-based accountability. And let me talk about the difference, because I think the social sector has been so compliance-driven for so long that sometimes organizations don't even recognize the shift that's needed to be made. So your typical compliance-based organization is focused on how many services one delivers, or how many clients have you served this year. And that is important metrics, because obviously if we're not engaging our clients, we can't change their lives. But just because you engage a client, just because you serve a client, does not mean that you're making that client better off in a way that will help you achieve that mission statement on your walls. So for example, and I tell this story a lot, we were working with one organization that was working with youth, and they were able to engage. They got lots of referrals. They had a lot of demand for their services. So they were able to tell a good output story. They were able to talk about how many youth they were serving. They were able to talk about the different types of programming they were offering to those youth. But when they move from an output-centric organization or compliance-based organization to a outcomes or impact-centric organization, that means that they now were looking at how many of their young people were increasing their grades, how many of the youth were recidivating back into the juvenile justice system, how many people were moving towards whether it was meaningful volunteer experience, work experience, or secondary education experience. So now they're looking not just at what they do for their particular beneficiaries in their youth, they're starting to look at how are people better off because of the services they provide. And so when they're having conversations with their bosses and their leadership and their supervisors, it's not just about what did you do, but it's looking at how are you moving the needle? And so in this particular organization, they saw that they were doing a lot of work. However, their recidivism rate was much higher than they would like, meaning the youth that they were serving were going back into the juvenile justice system at a rate that was not acceptable to them. And so these accountability conversations were around what, why, right? And starting to look at the data, and they can start to innovate and make tweaks to their programs and see how that has changed in the recidivism rate. So in order to do that, in order to help facilitate your organization to be data-driven, to have these conversations on client outcomes, you'll need the right tools in your organization so it will make it easier to be impact-centric. Because obviously, collecting data, managing to data, that's not why you're in business, right? You're in business to increase family stability. You're in business to change young people's lives. You're in business to get people back to fully functioning. You're in business to stabilize people in their incomes or increase their incomes, give them their basic needs they need. That's why you're in business. You're not in business to collect a lot of data and use data, although I'm obviously telling you, you need to do that. So you want to make sure you have the right tools in your organization that are embedded in your organization that allow you to focus on your core mission, but yet still allow you to be data-driven. And timeliness is so key. A lot of organizations, they make the mistake of, maybe they have data somewhere living in someone's office, but no one has insight or visibility into those particular data. So they need the ability to demonstrate those results quickly. So when a funder comes or a grant opportunity comes, they can quickly pull that data, share it with their funder, but again, not deter from their core mission. That stops so many organizations in their tracks or limits the opportunities they have because they don't have that information, those insights at their fingertips that help them increase their sustainability and increase their funding. So the good news is we're going to teach you today exactly how to become an impact-centric organization. What are those best practices? What are those steps and those key considerations that you should be making? All right, so here are our steps that we'll be talking about today. And we'll be walking through each one of these, giving you very practical tips and tools to help you move your organization forward to a more impact-centric organization. So are you ready? All right, let's go. Okay, so the first thing we talked about was we have to determine why you do what you do. I know that organizations just they come to me and say, okay, what data should I be collecting? And I said, wait, before we just talk about what data you should be collecting, we need to get really clear on your mission. And we want to make sure that your data, the data that you're collecting, is aligned with that mission. And so the 5 whys exercise, if you follow me a lot, you will know that I always come back to this 5 whys exercise because those are going to be your outcomes. And it's a very easy question. Why do you do what you do? And you know, depending on your mission, it could be to increase individuals' self-sufficiency. It could be to increase their affordable housing. It could be to increase their functioning, right? And so when you think about your impact, what do you want to know about your organization's impact? Most people want to know how did what they do lead to key outcomes that they desire their clients to experience. So when you ask yourself, why do we do what we do? Those will be your outcomes. And that is what you will want to be measuring and tracking to talk about your organization's impact. You also want to think about what you want to do with that data collected. And that's really key as well, because if depending on what you want to do with it might change what data you need to collect. I was on a call just earlier this morning where someone wanted to track not only how were people moving into employment, but a lot of their clients were experiencing unique barriers to employment. So this individual SureImpact user wanted to make sure that they were also tracking barriers to employment because they were going to use that information for advocacy. They were going to use that information for policy change at a system level. So yes, they would be able to tell the story about how the beneficiaries of their program were getting better and getting into better jobs. But those who were unsuccessful, that had these barriers to employment, they wanted to take that information and use it to go advocate. So really thinking about, what do you want to do with data, and making sure you're collecting the right data to be able to tell that story, to do something with it. And if you don't know why you're collecting a specific data element, or if you don't know what you're going to do with that particular piece of information, then you may start to ask questions about, why are we collecting this? Is this necessary, or is this just a waste of our staff's time? And one thing you also want to know are, how are people better off because of the work that we're doing? That's often, that should be the core crux of what you're doing. But in order to answer that question, you need to be able to track not just what you did, but how are they better off? What are those outcomes? And again, those typically go back to your whys. Why does your organization do what it does? So now we want to go to the end in mind. When we think about how to become an impact-centric organization, let's talk about, what will success look like in 2022? And what is that story we want to tell at the end of the year? And so I am a former researcher, and so I often think of these things as research questions, but it's thinking about, what story do I want to tell at the end of the year, and making sure that I have the right data and the right processes today in order to tell that story at the end of the year. And so one of those stories that you will want to tell, especially if you want to write a very successful fundraising appeal, have a very successful annual report, a very successful grant narrative, is talk about, what is the connection between the services you provide and the outcomes that you produce. Again, so then that means that you need to not only know what you did, who you serve, but what are those results? How does that contribute to positive changes in your community? Again, how are you moving the needle on key important outcomes that are important to your community? What are the milestones you can measure, and what can you control to get there? Again, having those output and outcome data allows you to tell this story. It allows you to educate your funders. Do you have evidence-based practices, evidence-based approaches to get, because what you do creates change, and you can tell that story. And then, what do you want to share in your annual report? Are there any key metrics, any key pieces of information that you know you need to share, making sure you understand that today and that you map your data accordingly. So before you start to think about what data you need, think about what story you want to tell, what insights you want to provide the community at the end of the year. That will set you up for a very, very successful 2022. So here's a good inspiration. The Center of Hope, they're a SureImpact user, and they use SureImpact to gather the insights they need to talk about not only what they do with youth and families that they serve, but also how their programs are better off. And so they're able to look at their program success rate. So how many children are increasing academic gains? How many families are getting into new and good jobs? How many people are able to pay their child support? How many people are not going back into the criminal justice system? So they're able to capture their program success rate, not only for individual programs, but then aggregate across their entire programs. What is that overall success rate? They're also able to look at what is the cost per success. So using that success rate, how much does it get to one family's outcome, and then comparing that to the community's savings because their outcome, and then they're able to calculate what is their social return on investment. So it's having that mind, like that's a story at the end of 2022. If you want a very, very robust grant narrative, a very, very robust fundraising appeal, you're going to need to have certain data elements in order to, at the end of the year, talk about that social return on investment, talk about your success rate, talk about what you delivered and the results that you got for your customers and your family. So again, you want to map out, where do you want to be? What story do you want to tell? And then map out the data from there. You also will want to think about what is the linkage between your outcomes and what you do. And so again, that's where you're going to need to be able to have outputs data. So those are the services that you provide, quality data, that would be stakeholder feedback, feedback related to maybe timeliness, customer experience, client satisfaction, and then the results that you're getting. So think about your organization's logic model. Do you have an effective program model, and can you prove it? Do you have the data in your organization to prove why you're an evidence-based and data-informed program model and the linkage between what you do and how well you do it? And so in order to do that, you'll need to collect the right data to demonstrate that you have an effective program model. So think about right now, your particular organization, and do you have that information? Do you have clearly in a way that you could articulate how what you do is related and correlated to how people are better off? Because in order to have a very successful organization, you will need that. So we need to then go, okay, we have to have outcome measures. We need to create the best outcome measures. And often we're asked that question all the time. What are the best outcome measures? What should we be using to measure and tell our story? And so here are some qualities about what is a best outcome measure for you. Well, first, it's something that's quantitative, something that's it's standardized, and it reveals important information about your services and the processes that support them. So it has to be aligned with your mission. It has to be something that, fairly in the relatively short term, your clients are experiencing as a result of your services. You want to make sure that these are, these pieces of information, these outcome measures are also a tool to help you make better decisions. They'll help you better manage and improve what your organization does. If you have an outcome measure, but at the end of the day, you don't know what to do with it, then it is not the best outcome measure for your organization. You want it to be something that can drive behavior because it's directly linked to your services. So for example, if you are a workforce development program, you'll likely want measures that you can have some control over by changing your intervention. So whether that's retention in jobs, job placements, job wages, things that you have direct control over. If you are a behavioral health organization and you do nothing related to workforce, you don't refer to workforce programs, you don't have any tangential kind of anything related to workforce development, probably your best measure, outcome measure, would not be elements of employment. And yours might be more about functioning, or how have we changed one's thought processes? Have we changed one's health outcomes? Have we changed one's general overall global mental health? These would be the outcomes that you would want to track because you have direct experiences with, you can change your interventions to change these outcomes. And I hope you see how, depending on your organization, your outcomes will be different, because at the end of the day, your outcome measures tell the story of how well your organization is fulfilling its mission. And with SureImpact, we want to take out the hard. We've worked with hundreds of different organizations, whether it's workforce development, family serving organizations, behavioral health organizations. And what we've done is we've created the best, an impact measurement library of over 200 outcome measures aligned with whether it's how well you do it, so your quality measures, or how people are better off, which are your outcome and impact measures. And so when we work with our customers at SureImpact, we give them this library. We say, if you're not sure what to measure, here's a list of best practices. Which ones are most relevant for your organization? What would help you tell your story better? What would help you drive your impact-centric conversations? What aligns with your mission? And so we kind of take out the hard for you, and we give you a place to start to help you drive to an impact-centric organization. All right, so the first step is to understand, where do you want to go? What story you want to tell? What outcomes you need to track. Now, once you've got that all decided, and do that first, don't go to the tools first. Too many organizations start with the tools first. And if you start with the tools first, then you might actually have a tool that doesn't help you get to where you want to go because the tool was not aligned to help you manage your impact. So you want to ask yourself, okay, now that we know what story we want to tell, we know what data we need to collect, what tools will we use to help us consistently and easily measure and manage our impact? So we want to share with you how SureImpact will take your case management to the next level, how it helps embed into that organization an impact-centric culture. So if you're unfamiliar with SureImpact, SureImpact is a cloud-based SaaS case management and reporting tool that helps nonprofits better measure, communicate, and share their outcomes and impact story in a way that was never possible. And so what it does is it puts into your case management workflow, depending on what program a client is enrolled in, the measures that your staff need to be tracking for them. And it gives visibility into how you're moving the needle and that relationship between what you do and how people are better off. So you need to make sure that whatever tool you're using, whether you're using SureImpact or anything else, that you're able to track what you do. So the activity that you're doing, as well as the measures and how people are better off, depending on where they are in the services that you provide for them. So once you've created the right tools or implemented the right tools that are allowing you to do that, you also need to increase staff's data capacity. Because if you want to become an impact-centric organization, you can't just let it live somewhere in someone else's office. That you may have data, but it's not going to create the impact-centric organization, the accountability based on outcomes, the being an outcome-focused organization in that continuous learning loop. You may have data in your organization, but you will not be able to have the ability to increase the staff capacity. So a product like SureImpact increases staff capacity because it gives you a very easy to use platform where your staff will have insights into their own caseload in terms, how are you moving the needle for one individual person, as well as how are you moving the needle for their collective, all the staff that they're serving. It will also allow them to track the activities that they performed and the relationship between what they've done and how people are better off. And when more people are using data, then we have a much greater data-driven culture. Collecting data, tracking data is no longer seen as paperwork or busy work or something I don't have time for. It actually creates those feedback loops that are so important into creating a data-driven organization. And so what I mean by feedback loops is that we all know that we want to know how well we're doing in our work. And so the SureImpact platform allows staff to know not just how well their clients are doing and how well they're doing collectively, but then when they meet with their supervisor, they're able to have conversations, again, not just those compliance-based conversations, but those outcome-based conversations and brainstorm. Because maybe what they'll find is, like right now we're finding that through some communities and some networks, that the ability for beneficiaries of services to pay their rent and mortgage is actually decreasing. Well, we don't want to wait to the end of the year and see that, oh, wow, this year we didn't do a very good job at keeping people stable in their homes, because we didn't realize that this was trending downward until the end of the year when we pulled all our data and looked at it. But instead, at month one, at month two, we can have conversations about why is this? What is going on in our community? What is happening that is keeping people from being able to be stably housed? And a lot of it in these communities is that a lot of the money for rent subsidies has gone away. There was a lot of money available. Now in some communities, it's not as much readily available. And so then thinking, okay, well, those resources that these individuals had relied on is going away. What do we need to do? Do we need to have new partnerships? Do we need to go fundraise? We're seeing an emerging need, an emerging trend in our community. Do we need to fundraise for more support so that we can keep people stably housed? So I hope what you're hearing here in these examples is that data is not just something that you're going to collect and then tell an impact story at the end of the year. You want to have a system like SureImpact that's going to give you those ongoing feedback loops to not only inspire you and help you do your work better, but it give have better outcome-centric conversations. And then your leadership teams will be able to log in and see the entire impact of the organization and might make much better strategic decisions. The boards will be able to make strategic decisions on what they may want to scale, where they may want to grow, and maybe what they want to stop doing because it's not having the impact that it's having. So that's what we've talked about, kind of the building blocks in order to get to a strong impact statement. And so this whole webinar was inspired by the report we did at the end of last year around, what do you need to do to create a really great annual report? Well, as we were sharing with people what they needed to create a really great annual report, is we realized that in order to write a really strong impact statement at the end of the year, those were the 3 ingredients that were missing. So if you wait till the end of the year to write a great annual report, but you didn't think about what story do you want to tell at the beginning of the year, what are those best outcome measures that I need to track? How am I going to track that information in a way that's really easy to use? And it creates those feedback loops. So I'm certain, now this is the key, guys, and we've got to get out of this mindset. We've got to get out of this mindset that we can wait a year to decide if we were successful or not. No, let's create the cultures within our organization where we're certain, because we've been implementing systems all along that we're certain we're going to drive impact. And I'm not sure along the way, maybe it's because of the scientific method, or that a lot of researchers, and then there's something wrong with researchers, but a lot of researchers have been the ones to help us define our social sector programming. But we've really done ourselves a disservice because business, if you think about the way business works, it does not work that way. No business will ever kind of just decide, well, we'll wait until the end of the year to decide if we were successful or not, to decide if we were profitable or not, to decide if our customers liked our product or not. Right? I mean, just think about that for a minute. What if a business were to do that? They probably wouldn't be in business very long. No, the most successful businesses have those constant feedback loops, so they're certain at the end of the year they will have a successful year. And I want you to start to infuse those types of cultures into your organization. So when it comes to writing a strong impact statement at the end of the year, you're certain it's going to be good because you've been collecting the data, you've been using the data all the way along. So what do you need to write a really strong impact statement at the end of the year? Well, you need to know the number of clients you serve that year. You need to be able to describe them in terms of their demographics. What do they look like? What age were they? What race were they? What gender were they? What were their special needs in terms of, how did they start the organization? That's really important. Kind of what made them unique, what characteristics describe them, because that's going to get your the people that you're pitching to understanding who you serve, what problems they're facing, and how you solve them. Then you need to describe how many services did you deliver to them, what types of services, what variety, and what quantity, and then also share, and as a result, what were the experiences, and what were the results, and what were those outcomes. And so first, we need to know those 4 things. Again, I talked about the SureImpact model and how it tracks all that for you and gives those insights to you right there at your fingertips, so you can write a really strong impact statement. We also need to consider our audience. So as we're writing, now this is kind of taking those insights that you've tracked because you know what story you want to tell. You've built your capacity, you've found the right tools to help you track what did you do, how well did you do it, and how people are better off. But now when you're writing your impact story, we have to think about our audience and tailor our message to our audience. So thinking about our different stakeholder groups, who is most interested in what? And that might be different, right? You may have a government funder who wants to see that social return on investment. They want to see that cost per success. But you may have a foundation funder or a corporate philanthropy group that really cares about, let's say, they're really interested in the needs of children. And so you'll use your qualitative data about who you serve to appeal to them, because you're going to share with them, this is who we serve. We're working with this population that you care about. And so you do want to think about your audiences as you're telling the story and tailoring the message, using your outcome data to tailor the message based on the information that you found. You also want to think about what actions do you hope they take? What learnings do they hope they learn? One of the best, most impactful impact statements I see is when organizations take their data and they're not changing the data. They're not manipulating the data. This is real, true data, but they're taking the data and they're using it to inspire their stakeholder groups that they're sharing this with to take action. So whether it's advocacy, like I said, maybe you're learning that, wow, we're able to get people into these jobs, but the jobs just aren't at the wage level that they need to be for them to be able to be stably housed. We'll take that information. Don't look at it as a negative because only 35% of your clients were stably housed at the end of the year. No, take those learnings and insights to go advocate for policy change, to go fundraise for more programming, to look at how you can scale what's successful and say, this is working in our community, give us more money. So think about what action you want them to take because of this information and use it to create a very powerful impact statement.
And Sheri, can I interrupt for just a second?
Oh, yes, please do.
So we've got a great conversation going on in chat that I wanted to just kind of bring up for a second. And so it's talking about your comments around businesses, acting like a business and needing to know the impact by the end of the year. And so the questions and comments are about how businesses and social services are not completely the same, right? Sometimes it takes years to show that impact. And so can you just clarify a little bit about what you meant by that, about, kind of following the example of businesses with being certain about the impact?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for interrupting me on that. So what I mean, I do not by any means, and thank you, Laura. I'm so glad that you said that. By any means do I think that nonprofits should be run like strictly like businesses. That's not my soapbox, and I never say that. The one piece that it was a very small example, was that in the nonprofit world, we often don't take a learning culture where we're looking at those incremental progresses towards a longer term success than we do than businesses do, right? Because of just the expectation that businesses will be profitable or will be successful. So when I'm talking about success, I'm not talking about profit in the nonprofit world. What I'm talking about is, what are those? We understand that it could take years. And I now opened the chat and I did see your point about how sometimes social sector programs have been defunded or stopped too soon because of this this notion that they weren't successful. And what my point is that if we have those, if we're creating a data-driven, impact-centric culture where we're constantly kind of measuring those short-term indicators, they don't, I'm not suggesting, and would I ever suggest, that you wait until, if it is a long-term 3-year program, we definitely need indicators of success along the way, and making sure that we are creating a culture where we can share that story and understand the relationship between those incremental successes and that longer-term success, so that we can tell the story how we are making incremental changes. And that once we kind of get that to scale, we'll start to see larger changes. And impact data is the key to being able to have those conversations with particular funders. I think that was my point. So thank you very much, Laurel. So here's some examples of impact statements or being able to tell your story. So with your outcome data, being able to talk about it. Now you can see this isn't all just these hard and fast social return on investment data. This is a supporting housing provider being able to say how 9 in 10 of their program residents feel the program is improving their health, outlook on life, and ability to remain independent. This is qualitative data. This is about the experience that this individual had. And as a result of that, 80% of program residents feel a sense of community in their neighborhood. Right? Again, I'm not speaking only those hard, tangible, census tracking data elements. Those are important too. But this is the qualitative stuff that really shows the humanness, the human-centricness of your programs. Or we have a family service provider can talk about how 97% of the children served improve their school attendance rates. So we know that if we can increase the number of days a child is attending school, then that's more education and learning that they would receive. And hopefully the schools will see better outcomes. But you know that you've increased their attendance. Or 78% of students exceeded their grade levels in math by the end of the programming. Again, just demonstrating those elegant changes and nuances and values of your particular program, instead of waiting or relying on some larger systematic programmatic outcome data to be the fate of your program. So we've kind of, that was my talking about how are we going to share our story. We also want to validate our impact. We want to be able to have a place for someone that if they came and asked you and said to you, well, how do you know this to be true? Right? So we can write a bunch of words on a paper. We can say a bunch of impact statements, but what if your funder comes and says, well, how do you know? How are you tracking that? You want to be able to have proof. You want to be able to show them, well, because these are my systems. This is the tool that I'm using. Bring up your dashboard, and SureImpact gives you an amazing tool to be able to pull up for your funders and show, like, especially in this era, in this movement towards trust-based philanthropy, to be able to show them, look, I'm serious about my impact. I'm serious about tracking what we're doing. I can show you how many hours of service I delivered last year, how many unique clients I served, and how we're moving the needle, where people were at the beginning of my program, where they are today, and how many people have maintained their success. You want to be able to validate that what you say in your annual report is true, or what your theory of change is. And the beauty is, if it's not, you can make those elegant tweaks. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You make those elegant tweaks that will help you be more successful, or serve more people, or scale your programs to have greater impact. And you're going to put all this together and you're going to share your story wide and far and celebrate your success. Inspire others to be data-driven. You let people know what you're doing. So if you're being impact-centric all year long, when it gets to the end of the year, you don't have to worry about putting together the annual report. You'll know you have all the data that you need to quickly tell your story. You don't have to spend a lot of time putting this together. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a data scientist or an analyst to tell your story. You'll have everything you need so you and your team can spend more time, more energy doing what matters most to you, which is serving your clients, going out there, telling your story, advocating for systems and policy change. But it's the impact data in your annual report, in your impact report, that's going to help you do that. It's going to help you raise more money. It's going to help you advocate for the policies and changes you need. It's going to help you inspire your staff to deliver those evidence-based services, right? So it's very, very important. I'm not saying that an impact report isn't important, but what's so important is to these pieces that I'm telling you about. And you know, we're obviously biased, but implementing SureImpact into your organization so you have all those insights, you have all that information at your fingertips, so you can share your story and go spend the time that will move your organization and your mission forward. So there's two ways to do this. Hopefully you've gone, okay, I see where my organization is today. I see what things I need to work on. There's two ways. You can do the manual approach, and many organizations are doing that. And that's where you start, the step one is we are looking at, okay, what do I want to do? What's my measurement framework? What best outcomes and outputs should I be tracking? And you may be collecting that data in Google Sheets, Excel. Maybe this piece is over here in this case management software, but this is living on Anita's computer. And this story, we have some surveys somewhere that we track. So you can have it in a variety of systems, but then someone at the end of the year or whenever, however frequently you want them to run the reports, they're going to have to merge those databases together, analyze that data. And hopefully if you want to be impact centric, you're going to do this at least monthly to have those conversations. Then you'll make those data-driven decisions. Then you can share your story with your funders. And then you'll start to see the outcomes that our customers have seen in terms of increased funding or being able to show how you save a community significant dollars because of your efforts and how people are better off because of what you do. But you're not going to be able to get to those results unless you walk through this whole entire process. So that's option one. And that was option one for thousands of nonprofits until we said, we don't want that option anymore. What we were hearing is, why aren't you being impact centric? And nonprofits were saying to us, well, because we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough staff, we don't have the expertise. And so here at SureImpact, we said, well, those are real reasons, but let's eliminate those reasons. Let's develop a platform. Let's leverage the technology that's available today and create a tool for the nonprofits, made specifically for the nonprofits, where that old model doesn't have to happen, where there can be one platform that everyone in your organization can use, the entire ecosystem can use, where your staff can have a place to be impact centric, where they can see their own outcomes, they can see how their clients are better off because of what they're doing and have that feedback loop right there, where managers can have those impact centric conversations, where administrators can log in and see the collective impact of their agency across multiple programs, but right there in one place. They don't have to go back to their program staff, waste their program staff's time trying to pull together the data and the reports that they need when they could be delivering services or managing staff, giving access to collective impact entities and backbone agencies to see the collective impact of the work, allow collaboratives to have shared measurement, allow seamless data sharing between funders and grantees so they can see the collective impact. So SureImpact is taking all of the challenges and the problems that we were hearing from the field in terms of becoming an impact-centric organization and saying, well, let's change the model. Let's get you to those insights that you need today. Let's start with the basis of a simple case management tool, but take it to the next level and turn case management into impact management. So I know I've thrown a lot at you because everyone was here on their different journey. So hopefully you have been able to take one elegant solution, one elegant idea in order to take back to your organization so you can be the most impactful organization yet. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have that you arose during this particular webinar.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sheri. That was great. We do have a couple of questions around so shared measurement and impact. Mm-hmm. And so one of them, so, you talked about shared measurement in a collaborative, but how do you do shared measurement in a collaborative if all the providers provide different services?
Okay, well, that is a great idea. So if you're in a collaborative, you want to be able to align basically common outcome measures. So maybe not every single organization will be responsible for the measures, but you want to align basically the same thing you would do in an organization. Why does this organization do what it does? Ask yourself, why does this collaborative do what it does? So maybe the collaborative and all the organizations in the collaborative are working to increase family stability or working to, really make a community vibrant. And you might think about, well, what are all of the indicators of this vibrant community? It could be increased jobs. It could be, housing stability. It could be grades in a school. So thinking about all of the different key indicators of that collaborative that collaborative is trying to accomplish, that's where then you have this basis of, we call it the impact measurement framework. Then you're going to go down to different programs within that collaborative will be assigned different measures. And, I'm speaking from the SureImpact technology, but what it does is it allows you to assign a client into a specific program. And if they're enrolled in that program, then it would be, those are the measures that you need to track. You don't have to track everything because it might not be your organization's responsibility to track that other outcome. Your responsibility is to track education, or someone else's responsibility to track income because their services is aligned to income. And so when you have a tool or a platform like SureImpact, what it does is it allows for that shared measurement to be possible because it will link what a family or an individual or a student receives and how they're better off, but at a much more collaborative level, because they could see how they received not just, a singular siloed service, but how did they receive after school programming and education programming, and their family received housing supports, and what is that larger impact they received? Thanks, Earl, for the question.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we've had a couple more come through. One is, how do I look at one individual client's progress for their measures, not the program as a whole, just the individual?
Sure. So, well, in our SureImpact platform, we've built it where for each individual client, there's a history tab. You can just click on the history, go to the measure that you're interested in, and it will show you at time 1, this was their outcome, the time 2 interval, this was their outcome at time 3. So you can see for an individual client how they're moving through or progressing outcomes over time. Now, if you're trying to do that manually, it's a little more complicated, it's a little harder, but then from that individual levels data in the SureImpact model, it then aggregates all of the individual's data in order to give you a more collective impact approach.
Well, and a follow-up to question to that, she asked, and can you see all of the client's measures at once?
Can you see all of the client's measures at once? Well, you can. You would click their different measures. So yes, but not it. I'll say right now, unless you're only assigned one client, we don't have a filter to filter a dashboard by an individual client. Although I would say it wouldn't make sense because it would just be numbers anyway. But you can see the different measures right there in your history tab.
I think slide 15 has a picture of the history tab. If you want to share that on your screen.
There you go. So you can see here how you have, this is the housing stability self-sufficiency measure, and you can see how it's moving the needle over time. So it started out as a 2, and the most recent measure is now a 3 at the top. But if you just click on, if you wanted to know, okay, let me see the family stability and now food stability, you would just click on the different measures and see them over time.
Perfect. All right. Another question, how does the feedback loop work from the agency to the participant?
How does the feedback loop work from the agency to the participant? Well, so the theory there is that the individual working with that particular client, now a lot of this has to do with the human relationship, right? And so you're collecting the information that is giving the participant a voice, and you're using their voice to guide programming. And then the other way is, as you're tracking, now if you're communicating with your participant, you're able to share with them how they've been progressing over time. They might not have realized it, right? You have that data right there that as you're working with them, reminding them or sharing them or printing, you can just print off their history and say, you know, when we began, this was what you were dealing with, and this is where you are today. And so it's sharing, it's one, collecting information and collecting key information from the participant, then also giving the ability to share that information and that progress back to the participant.
All right, thank you. So next question, can you sync data from other platforms to SureImpact to track it there?
Yes, so SureImpact does allow you to basically, if you have data from any other source, you can upload it into SureImpact, so it will be living with that client in their in the right spot. It will go aggregate it towards the dashboard, and so we definitely we've embedded that capability. We are working on developing kind of an API that would allow you to plug in and seamlessly do that. But right now we know that there are so many different platforms that nonprofits use that we wanted to make sure that it didn't matter what platform you are using, you could easily upload the data into SureImpact so that it could be stored in the history. It could also be aggregated and become your agency's one source of truth, if you will.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today. So thank you to everyone for attending our webinar. We will be reaching out to make sure all of your questions got answered. We would like to invite you to schedule 30 minutes with Sheri to see what your organization needs to do to make 2020 your most impactful year yet. And I will be sending out the webinar recording and slides. So thank you again, and we hope to see you at future webinars.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.